It's on a pronunciation. Is it Sessic?
This is John Milburn, Laws 12060, Trusts for Central Queensland University. It's week 2 of term, the first of the Zoom sessions for this term, and tonight we'll be covering a few things. The material that you have in your textbook is comprehensive, and the study note guides help to supplement rather than repeat the information that's in the textbook. As many of you who have worked with me before know, my preferred means of communication is, in this context, UCrew. And the reason I say that is that it provides an opportunity for you to ask me questions, for me to ask you questions. It provides you an opportunity for you to post material, as I do, and anything that I might say is available for the class generally, rather than through emails. So if you do send me an email, and please feel free to do so, don't be necessarily surprised if I ask you to repeat that email in UCrew so that everyone can see what my response is. I'll usually provide you with a response and say, please ask me this question in UCrew, and I'll just repeat and cut and paste the response. So I hope you can see some benefit in that. Okay, so I've seen a few other people, Brad, others that I've worked with before. Okay, so it's going to be an enjoyable term, interesting term, and I take it that most, if not all of you, have already done equity. So we're using the same textbooks as we did for equity. Tonight I'll share the screen. Before I do, I just want to run through the textbook material to make sure we're on the same page, as it were. So the textbook, Principles of Australian Equity and Trusts by Radden and Stewart, 3rd edition, supplemented by the complementary text, if you wish, and this is, you don't have to buy this, but there is a Principles of Australian Equity and Trust Cases and Materials commentary, which supplements that material. Pretty extensive textbook. Another reference book, not prescribed, but reference, which is excellent, is from the very well-regarded author Del Pont, and that's it there. So if you want to go a little more detailed, it is Equity and Trusts by Del Pont. That's the 6th edition. Again, it's a meaty publication. If you're looking for something that's a little easier and possibly cheaper, those publications are from Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis. There's a couple of other LexisNexis publications that you might consider. One is a Butterworth's, which is Q&A on equity and trusts. So it's lighter reading. And finally, a study guide on equity. So not directly on trusts, but still something that might be of general use to you. And that's through LexisNexis, and that's Buckenhall, Thomas and Ban. Okay, so that's the textbook material. What I want to do first is ask if there's any questions generally about what I've said, UCrew, why we do it, any feedback, any questions generally before we start. All good? And you can unmute your microphone if you wish.
John,
you
can I ask you one?
Go to show your face
ask you a question,
by
John?
taking away your sorry, just looking at just reformatting this. Okay, so if you like, you can unmute your microphone or you can show your face by opening your camera up. I'm going to share the screen, and I want to go through the Moodle page. So if you've got that with you, it could be a good opportunity to do that now.
John, can you hear us?
All right, can you see
Hello?
my second screen? Can you see that? Just give me the thumbs up if you can. It's the Moodle page. Can you see that? All right. Good, thanks, Peter. So this is the Moodle page. Look, for many of you that have worked with me before, you'll be familiar with the general layout, although I have revised and simplified the layout this term. So let's just go through some of the basics. Firstly, the unit profile, and the information about this unit is that we have the full-time study and the weighting, which is in the assessment, is still 40/60. Look, there was some commentary to the effect that we may change it, but I've kept it 40 for the written assessment and 60 for the invigilated examination. We'll go through the first written assessment later tonight. Remember, of course, university policy. I'm sure that you're all familiar with that. But if you're not, have a look at that. And in particular, have a look at issues to do with academic misconduct and the way in which we use technology. Student feedback. There was the discussion of moving to 2 written assessments and a take-home examination. I elected not to do that. There was the feedback that we should use Zoom rather than Echo 360. Those of you who've worked with me before would know that I've always used Zoom, at least for the last 5 years or so. And here's one. Greater use of problem questions, which hopefully you've got, and practical examples in addition to diagrams and flowcharts. So we'll have a look at that, and I'll provide you with some flowcharts which are not in the material, and we'll go through that tonight. So the unit learning outcomes is pretty straightforward. The textbooks, we've talked about that briefly. The referencing style. Now, all of you, I think, would be familiar with the AGCL. If not, please become familiar with that very quickly. Those of you who have worked with me before know that I am very keen to ensure that from the outset, the material looks the part. So please present your work in a professional manner. I'm much more of a stickler than other unit coordinators in that regard. And make sure that you reference your material following the AGCL, that's the AGLC rather, which is the 3rd edition. And I've provided some summary notes in relation to AGLC for your reference. In terms of the schedule, that's repeated in Moodle, and also I've got a Word document which I've called Timetable that you may have noticed. Now, I've had a few queries about the chapter comparisons between 2nd and 3rd editions. And if you're using the 2nd edition of the text, please grab your pen now, because I'm going to give you a quick note of the corresponding chapters. All right, so the 3rd edition, chapter 20, equates to 2nd edition 15, 21 equates to 16, 35, 36 and 25 equate to 28 and 19, 26 equates to 20, 27 is 21, and 22 is 17. All right, so if someone asks me a question about corresponding chapters, they may not be watching this video.
Sorry, John.
So did we all get that? All right. So we'll move on now. The assignment.
Sorry, John, week 7. What was that?
Pretty straightforward. We've got the first assessment due in week 9. You already know the assessment. So I'm just going to stop the share for a second. Can anyone tell me this? If you apply for Erin has a question. I'll come back to you, Erin. If you apply for Erin has a question. We'll see if we can see what's on Erin's screen.
John, can you hear us?
All right, so I can't hear you. Sorry. My apologies. And I thought that it was just me not being able to successfully encourage you to speak. Can we just test that again? Can someone speak?
Hello, John. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us, John? What was week 7 again?
Sorry.
Hello, John.
My apologies. Okay. Can someone talk now?
Can you hear us now, John?
Oh, yeah. Now I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies. I thought I was so clever in getting rid of the headset, I forgot to test whether I could hear you.
We know it was on purpose, John. We know
Oh,
you did it on purpose.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, having established that I can now hear you, does anyone have any questions?
John, I initially asked the pronunciation for, is it Ceci K or Cesti K?
Cesti Trust. Cesti.
Okay.
That's what
I looked up I looked it up on the internet, and it suggested Ceci K or Cesti K.
And look, that is entirely possible. Things have changed, of course, with the internet. You have the ability to ask for the phonetic or the pronunciation of the material which is presented. You can type in the words. So quite often you'll actually get someone to translate. So there is a risk here that having heard these things for the first time in about 1978, I've continued with the way it was pronounced to me, and that may or may not be correct. I'm sure it was, but that's the way I pronounce it anyway, Erin. So thank you for that question. Any other questions while we're there?
John, it's Tamara.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi. With the tutorial questions, I did the ones for week 1 from the study guide, which happened to be slightly different from the ones that are up on Moodle. I just wanted to double check, which ones are we meant to be following, the ones that are up on Moodle or the ones in the study guide?
Yeah, look, go with the ones in Moodle, and thank you very much for raising that, Tamara. I mentioned, I think before we started, that this is the first time I've taken this course. So I was working my way through the study guide and cross-referencing, but I have not necessarily succeeded in matching them entirely. So go with what's on Moodle, and we'll go through that shortly tonight. So thank you for that, Tamara.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry, John, what was it corresponding chapter in, I think week 7, which was 21 in 3rd edition. What was the 2nd edition? Did you say 22?
No, the 3rd edition, chapter 21, is the equivalent of 2nd edition, 16.
16, thank you.
16. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, you're a very cooperative, happy lot. Thank you. That's excellent. All right, let's share the screen again. I just want to go through a few of the basics. No, sorry, before I do that, I won't share the screen at all. I'm going to ask you this question. Having released the first assessment, which is due on the 11th of May, week 9, how do you think you'll go if you ask for an extension of time? Has anyone got any answer to that?
You probably won't get one.
Not good is one response. Probably won't get one.
Didn't you have in there extension dates until, lodgement by the 20th, which means it will diminish by 5% a day or something?
Yes. So exactly. Thank you very much for those responses. They're all excellent. If you ask for an extension because you're not feeling well on the week of the assessment, you probably won't get the extension, because I'll simply point to the fact that you had 9 weeks, and that by the 9th week and the 3 days before the assessment, you should have just been polishing off your answer, not starting it. So will you get an extension? No. But you do have the opportunity to submit late. An extra 3 days will only cost you 15%. But those that are doing well in the course will not want to lose 5%, let alone 15%. But there is the cutoff. And if your material is not presented by 11:45 p.m. on the 20th of May, which is a Saturday, then you won't get anything. Sorry. And the reason I do that is I like to progressively mark the work during that week, then on the Sunday, and either release the results on the Sunday or the Monday. So you've got some time to have some proper feedback. And I hope you can understand that. But you'll appreciate that I don't like to provide any feedback until all the marks are in. So that's why I have the cutoff. Any questions about that basic regime? It's pretty simple. All good? Okay. Thank you. Let's go back to sharing the screen. And if you have any questions, please interrupt. And this time I'll be able to hear you. I promise. Okay. So once again, you should be able to see my screen. You'll see that the assessment for 40% is due on the 11th of May. And I'll return that by Monday the 22nd of May for the reasons that I gave before. Then, of course, we have the invigilated examination. It's 3 hours. I'm sorry, that's a long time. It's worth 60%, and the usual rules apply. Now, does anyone have any questions about the nature of invigilated examinations generally or more specifically? Have we all done? Do we know what we mean by an invigilated exam? It's where we turn up at the exam room and we sit with paper and pen for 3 hours. That's what I mean by invigilated, as opposed to take-home exam. So so B says yes. Unfortunately, I've had that experience. Yes, Brad?
John, since this is the first time you've taken this subject, prior exam papers, will they be available? I'm still trying to work out the new Moodle look. Yeah. And will you be following a similar style structure of exam?
Yeah, more than likely I will. There won't be too many surprises in the exam. And the reason I say that is that I think it's fair if I'm continuing the exam regime, I should be reasonably consistent to the manner in which it's been offered in the past. Those of you that have done other courses with me, such as ADR and environmental law, etc., might know that I do change that to my own personal style over a period of time, but I won't do that so much on this one. It will follow fairly faithfully the previous format. I'll try to dig out some past exams, Brad. Any other questions, comments? You can use the chat facility or you can unmute the microphone. All right. I'll go back.
Sorry, John. I just had a quick question about the assignment. I noticed that we're not allowed to, it's okay for us to work with people, but we're not to collude.
Yes.
I wondered if it was okay if, say, one person is interested in acting for the sister and another person for the children, if there's any way, I don't know, I've never really done a group assignment because I'm scared of, copying. But, if one person's arguing for one and the other for the other, like it will give you a good idea of, where other people's arguments are going, and you can include that in yours or not.
I personally think that's a great idea. Does anyone have any comment to make about that? Does anyone have a problem with that? No? We're all happy? No, thanks, Angela. It's a very fine line, isn't it? Those of you that did Introduction to Law with me or with other course coordinators, unit coordinators now we're called, probably remember the Humsey Hancock case and issues to do with plagiarism, etc. Look, I've always firmly of the view that if you prepare the work yourself, even though it's based on information that you've gained through textbooks or discussions with students or collaborative work in the true collaborative sense, then there's no problem with that at all. Look, to be honest, the main aim here is that we learn and that the people that graduate from Central Queensland University are well regarded for their skill. So my main objective is to try and get you all through this course. I would love it if everybody passed. I'm not bound by any form of bell curve. It's purely based on the results that I see come through. And I want you to talk. And that's why I use you crew. That's why I discourage emails to me. So joining up with someone and having that type of interaction, I think would be excellent. Thanks, Angela. Any other questions, comments? Now, Sophie says, can we recommend a format for assignment 1? Yes, I would urge you to look at my sample paper. I'll have a look at that shortly. Those of you who've worked with me before have seen the sample paper. It's revised, it's updated a bit. Has anyone, just a show of hands, have you seen my sample paper? Yep, okay. So have a look at it. It's on Moodle. I'm sure it's there. If it's not, please let me know. And the idea of that sample paper, actually I'll call it up shortly. The idea of the sample paper is to provide some indication as to format and also substance. Now, the fact is that the material that I see presented to me from students is often superior to the layout that I use. The layout I use is pretty basic. It doesn't have a cover sheet. It's got some referencing, footnote referencing. It's got a few things that are good, like headings, but don't think that you must use what I've adopted, but use the principle, use the idea of a professional layout, use the idea of formatting in a way that's consistent and footnote referencing. All good? All right, we'll have a look at that shortly. And if I forget, please excuse me and go and look at it for yourself on Moodle. Any other questions, comments? What a good class we've got. All right, let's share the screen again. You should see my second screen. We talked about assignment tasks, and I'll now move to the Moodle page itself. Okay, so the unit contacts primarily me. Something that's interesting, you may have noticed, is connect now to your tutor. See that purple? Has anyone used that? I'll just stop the share for a sec. Has anyone contacted a tutor? No? I haven't worked with this system before, so I'm really interested to see how it goes. No? So let's make it an exercise. Let's do that. Let's use our tutor to advantage. Now, in terms of unit contacts, we've got myself and Matt Heelan. Matt is also a barrister, and we've got an email address there. Now, I'm not sure. I'll have to check with Matt as to whether he's tutor for everyone in the course or only some people in the course, which occasionally happens for some students, etc. Okay, news forum. I'm sorry, this is pretty basic, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. This is where I can announce things, and it's not necessarily that I will invite a response or you have an opportunity for a response, but I will invite things. And you probably notice those that are looking at my screen carefully will see, and I haven't shared, I'm not sharing, am I? I'd better do that. So if I'm talking about what's on my screen, you'd better have a chance to look at it. Now we can see my screen? All right. You'll see over here that we have general discussion and Q&A. Now, they should be blocked out for you. So if you don't see the Q&A or general discussion, that's my intention, because I want to divert everyone to UCrew. We'll have a look at UCrew in a sec, particularly for those of you who haven't worked with me before. Just remember, of course, there's plenty of support through the university network, and in particular, the library resources are available to you. You've got the assessment extension request, and we all know that you might try, but you'll be lucky to get that one through past me. All right, there's a little thing here called Easy Connect. I don't think you have access to it. I'm not going to show you it, but I'll just let you in on a little secret. I'll just stop the share here. I'm not sure if the Vice-Chancellor wants me to tell you this, so listen carefully. I'll just whisper into the screen. The fact is that Easy Connect is a way where I can monitor where people are coming on to Moodle and how often they're hitting the Moodle site, and it gives me an opportunity to chase up the stragglers. So don't be a straggler. You don't want to get an email or a message from me saying, I notice that you're not doing very much, and that's the way I can tell. All right? So that's through Easy Connect, and I suspect that you don't have access to that. All right. Any questions as we go while I return to sharing the screen? Okay. Down the left-hand side of navigation, I suspect this is the same for yours. We have the weekly tasks that are available to you. And let's go back to the Moodle site. So again, it's simplified on what it was previously. There's some talk up there about UCrew and Zoom. Now, I did ask last week if people take some time to look at the CQU Library Law Research Guide, which is available in additional resources. Did anyone do that? Okay, so see you later, Grant. So how did you find that, B? Was that useful?
Sorry, I've looked at it before, but I actually use the UQ one because I have access to it.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Has anyone else got any comments about the Law Library Resource Guide? Did we, just show of hands, did we have a look, or have we looked at it previously? Yes? Okay. Most have. If not, take some time to have a look at that. Okay.
Sorry, John, nothing's actually changed, has it? I've used it on a regular basis before.
No, it hasn't changed. I just wanted to take this opportunity to take a moment, midway through your course to say, let's go back and just check some of those basics and make sure you're doing things correctly. I'll just share the screen again. Okay, now UCRU's course discussion. This is being very much underutilised at the moment. So you'll see that I've just clicked on the link. That's all I've done. And it comes up with UCRU. And for me, I've got a number of different subjects where I coordinate. I'll go to trusts. And one of your colleagues, Peter, asked me a question about what we're going to be doing tonight. I just responded, and that's it. So we need to see a lot more activity on UCRU. Ask me some questions. Ask your colleagues some questions. If you come across something that's of interest, post it. Here's your chance to post some material. Post an interesting case or an article or something else that you think might assist your fellow students. It's good karma to do that. So that's where we need to see some real discussions, okay? So you won't be able to use the Q&A or the general discussion. This is where you go for that. Any questions about UCRU? Because when it comes to the final feedback, when you have your chance to push the big red button, I really want to make sure that I don't get any people saying, I don't know what UCRU is. Didn't know how to use it. We're all good? Okay. All right, let's go back to sharing the screen and back to trusts. Then we've got the timetable, which is really just something that's contained in the unit profile. News forum is where I post my material. I have some resources here which relate to the AGCL, and that's something that you should be looking at and understanding. I've also added a few other things that are of supplementary interest, such as the solicitor's conduct rules. Okay. Let's have a look at the first assessment. First assessment. Those of you thinking, why is he looking at the first assessment? We haven't even started course. Those of you that have worked with me before will probably remember that I have a basic philosophy, and that philosophy is we have a look at what we want to achieve and we work backwards from there. That's in terms of the content, but it's also in terms of the timing of the material. So the first thing you've got to do is look at that. So it's the 11th of May. Make sure you're in a position to submit your work in good time. I'm going to ask a favour, and that is that we just go through this material briefly tonight, and you've got a chance to ask questions and to make any comment that you might think is relevant. All right. So the task description, 2,000 words. I don't mind if you go a little beyond that. And you probably notice that unit coordinators have their own individual styles. So whereas I say I'm quite a stickler for presentation, for the formatting, for the way in which the material looks, others are not so much. Contrast that to the word limit, where I'm a little bit more relaxed, where others, unit coordinators, say it's an absolute 2,000 word, don't go beyond it. So we all have our individual styles, and I guess that's what you've just got to work around that. The rubric, of course, have a look at that. And if you're pitching for an advanced level score, make sure you understand what I'm looking for when it comes to marking the assessment. All right, so here we are. Here's the assessment task, and I'm going to run through this briefly. I'm going to invite comment. So please come in with any comment as you see fit. All right, so, and I use this format a lot. You're in your first year and you now have to present something. So you're practicing as a lawyer, either as a barrister or solicitor, and you must prepare an outline of argument to present to the Supreme Court for either the plaintiff or the defendants. Okay. You'll see there that I've said to the Supreme Court of a state or territory of your choice. What I mean by that is that if you're doing this course from Western Australia and that's where you intend to practice, then tailor your material to the Supreme Court of Western Australia. I want this to be relevant as much as possible to you, and if Queensland law is not the primary area for your practice, then adopt the area that is your primary area of practice. Now, you've got a choice. You can either represent the plaintiff or the defendants. Who's the plaintiff? I'm just stopping the share. What's a plaintiff? Can anyone tell me that?
The plaintiff is the person commencing the action.
Yes. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. All right. And the defendants? The people responding to it. Okay. We'll just share the screen again. You can assume that pleadings are closed and the court has accepted some affidavit material into evidence. The trial is concluded pending receipt of outline of argument. And your task is to prepare the outline of argument. Okay, a couple of things. Can anyone tell me what we mean by pleadings? I'm looking for someone that's done civil procedure, perhaps. If you haven't, you may not have done, nobody may have done civil procedure. What's a pleading?
I would think it was the sort of points you're putting across to try and win your case, basically, to the judges of the court.
Yeah. So pleadings are the, I guess in a way I can describe it like this. They're the material facts written in a particular legal form which go to prove every element of the case that you're seeking to prove. So it may, and typically pleadings will start at all material times. The plaintiff was blah, blah, blah. The defendant was blah, blah, blah. Talk about the motor vehicle accident. Talk about the fact that the defendant was negligent. Talk about the damage that was caused and the compensation sought. So that's the sort of thing that we see in a pleading. But don't worry too much about that word. You don't need to worry about what it is. But I just want you to know what it is in a very broad sense. So the pleading is the material which is presented to the court in a formal manner, which outlines through identifying the material facts, the element of the case that you're trying to prove, either as the plaintiff or the defendant. Any question about that? Okay.
So, John.
Yes.
Brad. So when you're pleading, we'd be stating the facts that we rely upon as opposed to the evidence that's been agreed in the plea. So you've got evidence that's agreed, that's not in dispute, and then obviously you've got matters that aren't agreed that are in dispute. So that essentially the pleading is what we say for our case and what we rely upon. Yes.
So in the pleading, the plaintiff will outline the things that are relevant to the plaintiff. The defendant, the respondent, or the defendant or the respondent has an opportunity to accept certain things and put into dispute other things. So I just want to make sure that we understand that this is not a drafting pleadings exercise.
Okay.
What we're doing is preparing an outline of argument.
Okay.
I just wanted to explain what some of these terms mean so that you don't get stuck on them, wondering what they mean and how they fit into this exercise. In summary, I can say that you can accept the facts which are outlined in the task scenario as being appropriate, if you like, and proved in this case, but you put your own twist on it depending on which way you're arguing. I hope that answers it, Brad. Yes, Angela?
Sorry. So if we would like to start, we'd say we submit that and we say, what we're saying and then just go on and this is because and put case law and apply it to the case. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep. Go back to intro, use whichever of the legal logic acronyms that you like. So it might be CIRAC or MIRAT. You remember all that from intro? So identify the material facts, identify the issues, the rules, apply those rules and state your conclusion. So that's the sort of thing that you would do in an outline of argument. But it might be an idea to just see if you can find an outline of argument and maybe share that with people on UCrew, just the format, and we'll have a look at that together. And so because I said I'm happy for you to collaborate to a degree on this assignment, I'm encouraging you to talk about the assignment on UCrew. And that way everybody gets to see. Yes, Brad?
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off there. In this regard, the arguments that we use and the case authorities which we intend to rely upon, should we limit that to our course material?
No, you don't have to. No.
Okay, that's all right. It's only I was actually I'm doing my PLT, and I was sitting there reading through some of their estate law cases in regards to this topic. And when I first started doing my degree, I was giving more current material and I was getting marked down for it. And it was like, oh. So then I sort of stuck to texts and our learning material instead of going outside of that. So I was just wanting to make sure that you didn't have a list of, well, these are the authorities I want to see they rely upon and tick them off.
No. That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that question. And it would be entirely inappropriate of me to say you must stick within the confines of the text material when one of the first things I did is say, in addition to the text material, you might be interested in this text and this text and this text and this text. So no, absolutely not. And also, I've referred you to the law library, which gives you access to far more material than we have in the textbook, as good as the textbook is. So absolutely, Brad, go for, and I really like it. If someone can produce a case that was handed down in the Court of Appeal last week and put that in their assessment work, so much the better. Which means that coming back to the timing that I talked about, working backwards, make sure that you've got the bulk of your assessment done leading up to the week that it's due. But if it were me, I wouldn't lodge it 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before, unless that made you feel much better or you had commitments elsewhere, because there may be some new case law which comes in during the week of the assessment. So there's nothing wrong with leaving it towards the end. Don't leave it to the last minute. Computers crash, etc. Okay, but thank you, Brad. That's a great question. Any other questions or comments about what we've discussed on this assignment? Yes?
Yes, sorry. You were saying the sample, it's actually in, where is the sample paper? It's actually in the assignment link, is it? Or?
Well, we'll get to that, B. Yep.
Okay. We had to do something like this for like torts. Is that what you're thinking of? Like an outline of an argument?
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah.
Submission 1, submission 2.
Yes. Perfect. Great.
Is that the sort of thing you were looking for?
Yep. That's great. Thank you for that.
Okay.
And if you like, B, we don't need to see your content on what you put in that torts paper. You're welcome to share it if you like. But you could strip the content and leave the format, post that on UCrew, and you would get lots of thanks from your colleagues, I'm sure.
Okay, well, I'm happy to post it, and you can tell me if it's wrong. I mean, if that's not what you want, that's what I would like to know.
Okay,
yeah.
But it looks absolutely perfect from what I can see there. Thank you, B.
Yeah, except I don't know what's a cover sheet.
Angela.
Oh, I was going to say, I've actually started drafting just the body of the document that I can share now, if you want. Okay. Yeah, just to get some feedback. Just give me 2 seconds.
All right.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and then this is what there's nothing in here yet, but just to get a bit of feedback and to share with others. So I was just going to say, like, point 1, acting for the defendant, we submit this. Yep. So we put a summary there and then go into detail at 1.1. Is that what you're talking about?
That looks terrific. Thank you. Yes. And you've got it paginated. So if you could just show that first page, that's the cover sheet. He was asking what a cover sheet is, but...
sorry. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. The cover sheet is not necessarily something you would necessarily do in practice. but it does help me in reading the material.
If you're using Microsoft Word, they have cover sheets and you just insert your information. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I don't know how to unshare or stop share. Yeah.
You succeeded. Well done. Thank you for that. It's excellent. All right, Bee's got a smile on her face. She's got a little sample there. So if you're both kind enough to submit that material on UCrew, that would be excellent. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Let's go back to Erin said, thank you both. Always polite, Erin. Thank you. All right. Let's go back to sharing on my screen. And just looking at the assessment. So in June 2005, was that relevant? The fact that it was 2005, not 2015? Is that an issue, do you think? Probably not. It was a valid will. So you can assume that you don't have to argue whether it's a valid will or not, check whether it's been properly executed. We'll assume it's validly prepared, and the executor, the testator or testatrix, if you like, left her son in charge, leaving the bulk of the estate to him and the balance of the estate to her daughter. All right. Are there any questions then about what we're talking about? We're talking about a valid will, and we're talking about something which is pretty straightforward. From then on, it's a matter of reading through the material and identify the main points from a factual perspective, particularly if they're useful to advance your argument. Okay, so that's the assessment task. And you'll see that there's some quotes there from what is said to have happened during the course of the trial. Okay, I'll stop the share at this stage. Any questions about the assignment? We'll talk about it later.
John, can I just ask one thing? It was a week or so ago when I read that, but I noticed in some of the material you put on Moodle that you said to put in our footnotes, we could put further information in our footnotes.
Yes, you can.
Can I just clarify that? Because I remember in one of our other units, we were told, no, you cannot do that. You're not writing an academic paper, nor a textbook.
Again, we all have different views on this. If you include something in that additional material which assists the reader, I'm very happy for it to be included. So again, it's different emphasis from different people. And part of the exercise tonight is particularly for those of you who haven't worked with me, to get an idea of what I look for and what I'm happy with, what I'm not happy with. But thank you, Erin. That's a great question. I hope that's answered your question. Okay. All right. So we can talk about that assessment progressively through the course. I just wanted to raise it tonight to get us started. Okay. Let's go back to Moodle. I've promised to show you a few things, and time is moving on, so I'd better get to it. Let's go back to the landing page. And I apologise that I'm not going to catch up with everything that we need, but we will catch up over the next few weeks. Coming back to the landing page, you'll see additional material, and I've got to find that sample document, B. Can anyone tell me if I put it on there? Maybe I didn't.
Is it under that additional resources there, John? Just go back up a bit further.
Yeah, that's where I would have thought. No, look, I don't think I have put it on there. I'll do that. I'll post it on UCrew and I'll pop it on Moodle, B. So that's my sample document. If I forget, please remind me. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory, and you'll get the idea of that pretty quickly. Okay, now I do have some PowerPoints. If you can bear with me, I'll go through those with you now, but I'll make it quick. And, oh, sorry, there is just one other thing I want to show you, and that is in terms of where we have our answers for weekly questions, because we had a question before about the weekly assignment questions, and I want to show you what I've got in mind. So before I come to the PowerPoints, oops, let's go back. There's one of my sons diving in. Let's go back to this. And the weekly assessments are here. So the weekly problems, rather. The idea, of course, is that you do some work and you put in your response. I had a look at this and I thought that's not nearly enough responses. I want to see many more of those. So we'll deal with the problems from week 1 and week 2 next week, but I really do want to see a lot more answers there. Just push add a new discussion topic and add in your contribution. It'll help you when it comes to the exam, because you'll be answering many of the questions that you're likely to see in the examination context. No questions about that? All right. So coming back to the PowerPoints. Module 1, you should be able to see those on the screen. Concept of a trust. The elements of the trust. You should by now, through your reading, know what a trustee is. Trust, property and beneficiary. The set law creates the trust. And the trustee, there cannot be a sole trustee and sole beneficiary. I'm going to stop there. Why is that? Why can't you have a sole beneficiary and a sole trustee?
Because then it makes the trust effectively null and void or non-existent.
Yeah, true. There's just no point to it, is there? When it comes to dealing with trusts, it is important that you understand the terminology, and considering the concept of working backwards, I do want to show you in the limited time available to us just a brief overview of how trusts work in operation. So I'll move through these PowerPoints pretty quickly. They're really expressed clearly in your textbook and the notes. And I'm just giving you an opportunity to ask any questions if something stands out as something you want to discuss. But yes.
I'm getting actually quite confused, because on one hand it says that in order to create a trust you have to have the 3 certainties, and you need to declare, and there must be objective intention and so on. And yet on the other hand, you can have trust created without the beneficiary knowing about it, and without people knowing about it, and without even intending to, and without even saying the words that I'm holding this in trust, which is all the problems. I think, I'm writing to, and Angela is replying that I'm not just going around in circles, like whether there's a trust or there's no trust.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right, because there's much more to it than first meets the eye. And the difference, of course, between an express trust compared to a resulting trust or a constructive trust, different principles apply throughout those. So go with it, B, but you're spot on in feeling that there's some confusion. There's no problem with that. And it's a matter of identifying the nature of different types of trusts. It's sort of like if we were doing a course on animals, at the start you'd be thinking, but I don't understand, donkeys are quite different to cats. It's just sort of, they all come within the main umbrella, but there are different factors that apply to them. But thank you, B. So go with it, but you're right to be confused at this stage. Okay. Just going...
John, can I just ask a question? Thanks, John.
Yes.
What is the purpose, say, if somebody has made a will and they've mentioned a trust in there, why wouldn't it be simpler just to do the trust and leave it out of the will? Because surely once someone dies and their will's distributed according to their wishes, the trust still remains intact, doesn't it?
Yes, look, a new trustee can take over a trust. So we're talking now about the difference between an inter vivos trust, which is created during a person's lifetime, effective during their lifetime, and a testamentary trust, which is created, of course, during a person's lifetime, but becomes effective upon death. So the distinction between inter vivos and testamentary is quite crucial. It's one of the differences that sort of we were identifying when discussing with B. And I guess in simple terms, while the two, that is the inter vivos trust and the testamentary trust, may ultimately achieve the same result, the timing is significant for a number of reasons, and probably the most important is that if a person creates an inter vivos trust, they are divesting themselves of that property, probably forever, while they're alive, in circumstances where they may regret their decision. And we often see cases in trust law where people create a trust and then argue that the trust is not effective or they didn't mean to create a trust. And we have those arguments because people say, I want that money, I want that property back. So when it comes to a testamentary trust, they're not going to want it back. So then it becomes effective in the same way it could do if it's inter vivos. But there are some other reasons. There may be tax or duty implications in transferring property while a person is alive compared with transferring that property when people have passed on. I hope that makes sense, Erin. Okay, thank you. All right, I've run out of time. I'm going to just go back to the slides. We'll finish that and then we'll catch up next week. So bear with me while I go through that share screen again. Those of you that are doing evidence and proof will know why I'm running out of time. All right, so then we have some discussions on the difference between trusts and other documents or other legal concepts like contracts. I think that's all pretty straightforward. Have you all come across the concept of a deed? Do we know what a deed is as opposed to a contract? What's a deed?
A deed doesn't require consideration and it can be one-sided as well.
Yes, yes. An example of a deed that is one-sided is a deed poll, which is a deed saying my name is now not going to be John Smith, it's going to be John Brown. So that's a deed poll. And consideration is, of course, a prerequisite in contract, but it is not a prerequisite in deed, in a deed. So someone may enter into a deed of gift or a trust deed, inter vivos, where they receive no consideration, but because it's a deed, also known as a document under seal or an agreement under seal, then they can't argue later, well, it's not effective because I got nothing out of it. That's the nature of a deed, and it's a little more solemn, if you like, than a contract for that reason. Any questions about the difference between deed? Oh, Ricky asked about lectures and podcast availability. Yes, I will upload this material, the Zoom material, and I suppose I could probably post the slides on Moodle. That's not a bad idea. So I'll do that. I'll post the slides. I'll do that after the event, and I will upload the Zoom session. Is everyone okay if I upload it as an audio visual? Seems to me it doesn't use that much more data than just a podcast. Okay, good. All right, I'll do that. And you can probably tell I'm not a real fan of PowerPoints. I'd rather we have a discussion rather than everyone follow along some written words. But I'll put them on the screen. And I'd better call it quits at that. So I will post the screen, the PowerPoints on Moodle. I'll post the sample document. We'll talk more. We've got a couple of volunteers to post an outline for the argument that you need for the first assessment. And I think it's been lovely talking to you all. All good? Okay.
Thanks, John.
All right. We'll end it now, and all the best. See you then.